All right, it is time for Book of Experts TV. And I'll be honest, today is a treat for you and a win for me. I have one of my favorite first-time guests, but a coach, a mentor, and a friend really excited to share this story with you because you can grow your business. You can build a big business, a $500,000, seven-figure business with no list, no funnels, no fancy tech, none of that stuff, but just by going directly to people and having conversations with them. This guy I'm going to share with you, like I said, it's a big win. I've been so excited to have him come on. But first, let's get a message from Book of Experts TV.
Time for Book of Experts TV.
Topics you love.
Experts you trust.
Friction-free referrals.
Tried,
Tested,
Trusted.
This is Book of Experts, brought to you by salesman.me. Mr. Adam Urbanski, welcome to Book of Experts TV. I'm so thrilled to have you here. This is the black and white look is you've nailed the international man of mystery. I think this suits you.
Thank you, Tom, and I appreciate that. Awesome to be here. And I just, pray to the gods of technology that our internet connection is good enough to pull this off. And I've got to tell you, I love this intro. I love this video. Very, very nicely done.
Thanks. I appreciate it. We're really having fun with it. We've been building the community at Book of Experts, which, of course, you're there in it and listed on Book of Experts. I'm a big fan, and I want people to get to know you because you've been such a big influence and made such a big impact on me and the work I've been doing. Here's what I want to talk about first, because I think this is right out of the gate. There's a big differentiator with you, the work that you've done, the business that you built without having to rely on fancy funnels, all the technology. I mean, this is very contrarian in our space. It appealed to me, and I want to talk about how you got here because I've heard your whole story. By the way, folks, Adam is joining us from Wrocław, Poland right now. That's where he grew up. He's also a resident of California, but with the upside down world that we're living in, we're doing this long distance right now as he's back in Europe. But bring us to this point that I would love to hear how you got to this, not the full story, Adam, but this being able to generate a significant seven-figure business and doing it without all the stuff that everyone else is selling. That is fascinating to me, and I'd love for others to hear your story as well.
Without being too self-aggrandizing in the process here, I think it's like any idiot can make things complicated. It really takes a certain level of mastery before you can simplify whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you teach other people to do. And after 15 years of teaching people marketing, it really was a tremendous switch for me because my claim to fame was my attract clients like crazy system, which essentially was how to create a machine that brings ideal clients to you, makes them beg you to take them on as a client, and then throw whatever money you ask them to pay you, your way without questioning it. So it was really kind of sit back and have people come to you. And to this day, I'm still a big fan of this. It works, but it takes a tremendous amount of know-how, skill, and time to put together. And again, around 2015, I started looking at what else am I doing that works? And what am I doing that I teach my clients that when they do it, it works predictably, it works quickly, and consistently. And it was, I first called it snipering. Because it's like putting someone in the crosswire, of your telescope of a rifle. And then one of our mutual friends, Molly Mahoney, a great client, said spotlighting more than the theatrical thing. I like the spotlighting. It has, it coincides with the lighthouse languaging that we use. But it was essentially how do we take someone who may not be well known, who may not have a lot of technology know-how or resources, aka money, to go and hire a bunch of people who are quite frankly expensive. And then all the technology, as the world switched to the subscription mentality, all the technology, you start looking at $30, $50, $100, $200 for different pieces of software a month, and you need to run multiples of those. Before you know it, you $500,000 in the hole every month. try to put together very complex funnels, and it doesn't work. And I started looking again, what's the simplest, fastest path to acquire a client? And that was a kink in my whole thinking, because Seth Godin, I think like in the early 2000s or late 1990s, came up with permission marketing. I think it was early 2000s. And, my entire track lines like crazy was about permission education-based marketing versus this is interruption marketing. But the tweak here is it's permission-based interruption. Like you interrupt someone and immediately ask for permission to continue. And I think that little combination like makes it the winning combo that allows people to start with very little and very rapidly accelerate the revenue, so they have the resources to actually do whatever else they want to do.
All right. So first of all, a couple of things that I want to call out to folks that are going to see this. Whether you're joining us live, we've got a few folks on different channels there. I've got some comments coming in, questions, whether you're picking this up on the replay as well. First of all, the simplicity aspect. So that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Adam, was very attractive to me, because I also was feeling overwhelmed in this digital marketing space of trying to do too many things. So the simplicity of the model. And secondly, the ability to go directly to your ideal, your perfect prospects, and have a conversation with them. How do you do that in a way that doesn't send them running in the other direction, right? How do you, avoid making a terrible first impression, which is honestly what a lot of other people are getting caught up in this space. They've been sold this bill of goods that you can run these automated programs, you can drip on people, you can chase them all over the internet, but all you're doing is chasing them further and further away. So we'll return to this permission interruption model in just a moment, but I want to go back. I just want to roll back a little bit in time. How did you discover that this was, because you said you made this shift from essentially the authority-based or attraction model. Where did you get into this? Because it has completely shifted my world. I've learned a ton from you in this space. I attribute a lot of what we do and what works to you, Adam, because you've done such an elegant job of putting this together. And I've always wondered, where did it come from originally?
So I don't even know if I can pinpoint that, Tobin, because I've done this once I started looking, kind of following the thread, where did this whole thing start? I realized that I've been doing this since like early 2000s, almost from the beginning of my business. Even when, you find prospects while networking, but still you don't want to follow up with everyone. You want to sort of identify the right people to build relationships and connections with. And I think like the first technology-based example that I can think of was somewhere around 2006, 2007. Actually, my head coach, Michelle Schaefer, reminded me. I spotlighted her on Twitter. I reached out via DM and had a quick conversation and invited her to come to my live event. And to this day, she tells the story. She thought I had the wrong Michelle, but no, I had the right Michelle. I was talking to the right person that I wanted to invite under very special circumstances to my live event. And, so that was one. And I can think of example after example. Actually, Molly Mahoney, I just mentioned her. I spotlighted her on Snapchat. So this is 5 years ago. I was on Snapchat for about 90 days, but ended up getting a handful of really high-end clients from it. And, she tells a story to this day. I don't know if I can replicate this, but, one day she opens her phone and there's, Mr. Urbanski going like, yo, Molly, you there? Right? And it's like Snapchat was conducive to this kind of messaging, but it was like, well, who is this guy? Like, that's different, right? So I don't know where I learned this, but to me, it's always like people first, right? If you don't lead with, hey, I want to sell you something, but lead with, hey, I'm a person, you're a person, let's connect, but also not introduce a false pretense. Like, hey, I want to learn about your business or tell me about your family. Like, if you're really not interested in this, don't open with this. Like, I'm here to do business. I might have things that might serve you, but first, hey, I'm a human being. You're a human being. Hi, I just thought it would be cool to connect.
Yeah, I really I love this aspect. I think you bring a lot of humor into the work that you do, which is extremely attractive. This flat out works.
That's the only thing I've got going on for me, Tobin. I share the story. So Caitlin and Michael Domner, who are partners in SalesMap, you know them very well. Caitlin and I connected and eventually developed this partnership with Janet Clark, my other partner. But I did the same thing. In your terminology, spotlighted Caitlin. That's how we first connected.
And I can attribute this same approach to some of the best, most productive, most profitable and strategic relationships that I have in my life today, most fun relationships as well, to this exact process of approaching another person as a real human being and not just transactionally trying to make some business happen, which I think a lot of people get caught up hiding in their marketing, trying to make the funnels do the work, whereas this is about that, making that real connection and letting good things flow from that. I want to share one more story. I don't know if you even knew this, Adam. So one of the examples that we share in our training, the way we do our process, is actually me going through the buying process with you, because it was a real revelation for me. I share it with folks because I use it from the perspective of, this was a great buying experience for me. I literally went into our first contact, our first conversation, completely in my head of, I'm not buying right now. I just want to understand a little bit more about what he's doing. I'm going to ask a few questions. And 72 hours later, I was opening up a new credit card to go into the RRI game. And I actually walked through the exchanges that you and I had, because it unfolded so naturally and so organically and was such a good experience for me on the buying side. And I didn't know until after the fact how engineered the process was on your end. That was what was, I thought it just happened. And then, once I got into your working with you and your coaching and mentoring, I saw this was way more intentional than what I even realized. And I think that's what people are missing, is there is another option out there. You don't have to chase people around. You also don't have to sit back and just wait for them to come to you, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious, Thomas, since you sort of reverse engineered this thing and went and analyzed it, what was the thing that made it such a great buying experience, in your opinion?
Well, this brings us full circle to what you described earlier. So in this case, the specific case that I'm talking about, you didn't interrupt me first because I had reached out to you for some information. I kept hearing your name from other people, and they said, you need to talk to Adam. So I came to you first from that perspective, but you did ask permission at multiple points, and how you introduced what you did. It was clear that there was a business conversation to be had, but I felt in control and was able, I think even several times you said, maybe we should just talk about this. Let's take 5 or 10 minutes and jump on a call and have this conversation. And I was holding you off because I wasn't prepared to have a sales conversation. In fact, I was literally telling myself, I'm not buying. I've got these other things going. Now's not the time. Like, I had prepared myself to just say no, but it unfolded in such a way that I said I'd be crazy. In fact, my partner said, look, you're going to do this. Like, let's do this now. Let's accelerate this process instead of waiting.
Very cool. Yeah. So, on my part, it really is just, I think you nailed it. Like, engineering it in such a way, And I actually, before I even talk about engineering sounds unnatural in a way, right? So, but you've got to start, you can't do something that's unnatural consistently. So I think, and I've experienced it a number of times where we can give people scripts and technologies and tools, and it still doesn't work. You've got to essentially grow into a person that's naturally curious and caring about others, right? You've got to have this, abundance mentality and mindset. I think that's really important. Can it work without it mechanically? Yeah, but it's going to be too tedious and too taxing if you try to become something or someone you are not, right? So if you truly work on yourself, being more curious, more naturally giving, then this whole process is engineering to be of service to another human being, and B, put another person in control. I think this is kind of what freaks us out about buying and selling, that it's like one person loses control, and it's usually the buyer that kind of feels like, oh my God, what will happen to me, right? Will I be taken advantage of? And when you put them in charge of the process, where at any given point they realize, hey, I can just walk away and don't feel bad, don't make them feel bad about this. I think this is a lot of what's been going on, especially in the self-growth industry, where if someone chooses not to make a buying decision right this very moment, they're being made to feel like it's the worst decision of their life and they're a loser, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, no, you're not ready, you're not willing, for whatever reason, not a good time, no problem, right? And I think that changes the entire game.
I want to come back to that word that you just used, game, because we'll revisit that in a moment. That's a pretty key word here. But yes, 100%. So in my time of working with you, Adam, I'm holding up a black notebook. This is one of those moleskin notebooks. That's what I literally have, and I say this because I've been working on my book, talking about, what I've learned over the last several years in the process that we're running and why it feels such a great fit for what we want to do. I think I have 4 or 5 of these notebooks now, and a lot of them have pages where you've talked about, sometimes it's small phrases, like there is a charisma and naturalness to the way you express things that I've really come to appreciate, and I've made some notes of, when Adam says this, it just seems to be the right words at the right moment, and so I try to capture that in my notes. But also you described it, it's the bigger perspective of being curious, of being caring about the other person, and caring enough to ask permission, or caring enough to find the awesome in another person, that it's a frame of reference. It's a mindset that you bring to those interactions. That's probably what's made the bigger impact and influence on me, I think. And I think it's one of your gifts, honestly, the genius that you bring to this business world and that you're sharing with others. I want to talk about this game thing for a minute, because I want people to know about the RRI game. I know you don't talk about it publicly a whole lot, but people need to know this, because I've come back multiple times. I think this is another really unique thing about Adam Urbanski and the whole team at Marketing Mentors, is that people keep coming back. It's not just the exchange of information, although I've just said, I've gotten a ton of that from you as well. But Molly and Kat and all these brilliant people that are in your world keep coming back to play the RRI game. I've done it twice. Some of them have done it 5, 6, 7 times. What is your take on why people keep returning into your world to do this? What are you seeing on their end? And then I want to share what I think is happening.
Oh boy, I think that's a pretty complex question, but I can probably distill it to a few points. Some come back purely to reverse engineer the game, right? They just want to know, first time you go kind of, you dive head first and you go through it, and before you know it's over, and you're kind of like, what happened, right? I experienced something magical, but what happened? And they want to experience it again, but sort of slow down the process so they can actually enjoy it differently, right? I think the big part of the game is that in a weird, semi-masochistic way, it's kind of fun. And then I think the last part, I think the smartest people amongst us realize that it's actually the smarter choice not to go solo. And I think the comment I hear the most is that the game is addictive, because when people unplug from it, they realize that on their own, they can't make themselves do the things that they know they need to do. Like, it's like we've all experienced this. Like, I know what I should be doing. I know I should be eating healthier. I should be working out more. I should be spending more time doing X, Y, Z. That's actually important. And yet I'm choosing consciously to engage in activities that are less beneficial to me. Why do I do that? And the game sort of, not just you all the time to do the right things when they need to be done. And I think that's what people come back for. And it's my good looks too, I think, at times.
Well, you've created a fun atmosphere. There's no doubt about that. And that's why I wanted to emphasize that word. It is a game. So for folks out there that don't know what we're talking about, RRI stands for the Revenue Rev Up Intensive. It is a program that Adam and his team run. It is, I'm going to agree, it's a magical experience for folks. And I think it's very unique in our space because, listen, there are a ton of coaches out there doing really interesting work. It is very rare that you see people go back time and time again to buy the same program over again. And there's a reason why that happens. And one of them is, as you described, sort of putting the bumpers in place so that we're directed forward. I also think that it's a factor of hitting new personal highs, that when you want to raise your level of the game, that's why I see people because yes, it's some solopreneurs that are playing the RRI game, but there's also team-based businesses. So Molly has a team around her, and Mandy has a team around her, and there are a bunch of folks that have come in that have their full-fledged team, but they're still choosing to do RRI because they hit new record months, they hit new record quarters. By playing the game, they know they're able to raise their level and raise the bar of what they know is capable, what their business is capable of doing for a short and focused period of time.
I think, Kevin, another thing to highlight, and I'm sort of proud of this because when I started RRI, I had this, actually this goes way back. This goes back to like early 2000s, 2005, 2006. I launched my first coaching program that was kind of open to the masses in a way. And I think the first time out of the gate, we got something like 60 members into it, and it was $6,000 a year. And then I started noticing what's happening, which is about 10% of people will sustain themselves through the program, and about 5% will get spectacular results. But then what happened to the remaining 95%? And I always talked about, I compared it to the car industry, that if 95% of cars put on the road failed, they'll call the lemon, and they'll be recalled, and the manufacturer would go belly up. And in the self-growth training, coaching, consulting industry, it's just kind of a known factor that you've got about 10% success rate, 90% failure rate. So like, how do we reverse this? And I had this insatiable drive all the time. How do we reverse this failure rate? So RRI was kind of my attempt to do that and start this micro result revolution. That's like, we don't leave a client behind. There's no failure acceptable. And we, 4 or 5 years later, we could continue to have 90% success rate. And actually, if I look, if we don't deliver on the results, we allow clients to continue with us. So we really have 100% success rate, just not in the first 90 days. But what I really want to highlight is that the results are not optional. So if you want people to come back and do business with you, you've got to deliver the results, or they've got to get the results that they came for. Because no one would come back and say that, well, it was fun, let me just play again and play a game again. No, it was fun. It kind of had bumpers to do what needs to be done. But if clients don't get the results they came for, they won't come back, right? No mechanics will replace results. No amount of fun in pushing will substitute that. They need to receive what they actually sign up for.
Yeah, I think that you've set the standard that way, Adam. I mean, if there are other people out there that are doing it at the level that you are, then maybe I'm just not as aware of them. There are a lot of people out there that are making claims of these high, success rates. But when our partnership in SalesMap, when we talk, you've raised the bar for us as well. We talk about it consistently of how do we make sure that we have these no-fail results, because I think every coach, every consultant, there is some inconsistency of the results. Initially, when you're putting your program together, you're trying to figure out what works every time. And it's hard to nail that combination, because to be bulletproof that way, it's easy to say it, it's much harder to prove it. And that is one of the things about RRI. It's the proof is in the numbers. I've seen you share, screenshots, for example, of what the different cohorts are when they go through this experience with you, and it's all in the numbers. I think it says a lot about you. It says a lot about the team and the support folks are getting. One last question before we wrap up, Adam. I'm curious to hear your perspective, and this kind of brings us back around to where we started with the conversation. A lot of marketing, a lot of the conversation out there is about growth and scaling, and yet the process that you put in place is really doing the things that don't scale. It's that personal connection. Big companies are doing this, like big, HubSpot is a company that always comes to mind, but I know even your daughters have worked in SDR roles where people are doing, publicly, VC funded companies have teams that are out there doing this business development approach, and you've adopted it in the entrepreneurial space of going direct to the source. Like, where are your ideal perfect clients, prospects, and how do you turn them into clients? How do you make that happen in an intentional way? My question in this is, How do you help people make that shift? Because when you first start doing the things that don't scale, it can feel a little bit lonely. It's kind of like broadcasting. When you start your blog, you start your YouTube channel or whatever, your viewers are in the dozens at first. And then it starts to build. You build that momentum, but it takes a little while. How do you get through the dip?
I think it's really having a it really comes down to being honest with yourself and being honest with your clients. And what I mean by that is, in the service industry, in the solo professional kind of small businesses with the small teams, one of the natural human characteristics that kicks in is the fear of failure, fear of rejection. So we start developing mechanisms, like funnels and all the complexity of webinar machinery or whatever, just to protect ourselves from being exposed to a potential situation where you have a conversation with someone and you are being told no, right? And it's like it petrifies people for some reason. And then on the flip side, we start creating things that are more appealing to what we want. So dreams of big riches, power of, supervising a big team, having fancy offices. And my conversations with people are, and you've seen my operation, at least, from not from the inside, but you've seen it from arm's length, fairly close. I run a very lean business. And when I explore different ways of growth, like one of the concepts I was introduced to is that you make goals, like how many employees you're going to hire a year. And I'm like, I've been there. I ran a company at some point and had 103 employees. I sold it and I never looked back. And to me, growth isn't about how many people you put on a payroll. It's about how much freedom in terms of like your choice of location, time, your resources that you have available to you. So there was a client that came to me about 4 years ago. And he said, at first he came and said, look, I just want to make about 25, 30 grand a month. I want to work about 3-4 days a week, doing my consulting thing. And, can I get there within the next year and a half, 2 years? Well, he got there within the first 4 weeks, like consistently started hitting those numbers, right? And the next conversation is, do you think I have a 7-figure business here? And my question was like, well, potentially, but why 7 figures, right? I mean, you're making, $400,000 a year, almost $500,000 at this point. You're working 4 days a week. You're traveling the world while you're doing this. Do you really want to sacrifice a lot of that to now scale to 7 or multiple 7 figures? So what's really important to you? And I think the reason people are buying into my methodology is because, again, it eliminates a lot of the overwhelm, complexity, and it focuses on like, look, essentially what you bring into your business, if you get to keep a lion's share of it, you don't need to be scaling to $1 million and beyond. Like if you want to, great. And, will the extra money buy a few extra perks in life? Yeah. But you have to realize that somewhere around $500,000, you're the top 1% income earners in the world. You're not flying your own private jet yet, but you essentially have everything you possibly want to have. So it's like, why? What else do you want? Like what really matters? And I think, a lot of my clients also aren't 20 somethings that want to go like, oh my God, I want to be a billionaire. They're more like, look, I'm in my mid 30s, mid 40s. And it's like, I want to have a family. I want to have time to enjoy it. I want to build a nest, but I don't want to at the same time sacrifice the quality of my life while I'm doing that.
Yeah, I love this aspect of what you do, Adam. When you and I first connected, one of the stories that you shared with me was Megan Huber's, and I actually got a chance to do an RRI game with Megan, the second time I went in. So got to know her a little bit. She's going to be guesting with us next month on one of our expert panels. But that story of being able to grow a $500,000 business in a short amount of time without a website, without a list, like just using this process. And Megan is very talented, but she didn't have all the resources at the start, and yet she was able to put herself in position to really create a great lifestyle and a great business at the same time. It was super attractive, and that was one of the things that made me want to know more about it. I want to highlight one other phrase that I've learned from you. I want to give you, complete credit on this. It's sort of become a North Star statement that we think about. We talk about it with clients as well, but what is the thing that you would do if you were only going to get paid on results? And this doesn't mean you have to change to a pay for performance model. It doesn't mean you have to only get paid when you produce the results. But if that was the case, what is the work you would do? What is the process that you would run? I think it really helps us define and cut away all the excess fat and really get to the bare bones of what should we be doing, what do we enjoy doing, what will you stick with when the going gets tough, all those things. To me, that's a really key question that I've learned from you along the way that helps focus in the work that needs to be done.
I love that. And then there's the second part to it, which is once you figure out, what is the work that you can do, that you can consistently deliver the result, right? Because you want to get paid consistently. I think the second part of it is the asking yourself, who can you do this for consistently? Because I think part of our secret, actually a big part of our secret, and clients in our stable that are consistently winning with their clients and customers is actually client selection. All right, we build a machine, but that machine needs the right ingredient, and it's sort of like you have a high performance engine. You can't put a low octane gas into it. You've got to put high octane gas. So it's really identifying when you have a process that works. It does work, but for the specific type of person and has specific type of things in place. So who are your customers, your ideal customers? I think it's vitally important that we identify this as quickly as possible and then stick to it. I always talk about universe testing you. So whenever you resolve to something, universe will always throw you kind of a curveball, go like, hey, but what about this? And if you take that curveball, the universe will simply say, yeah, I think you want a cake, but you're going to settle for crumbs. So here are some more crumbs for you. And it's really just deciding, no, I want the full cake. These are the kinds of clients I want to work with, and not lowering that bar.
Adam, I'm going to have you come back on another day so we can take a deeper dive into that question about who is the perfect prospect that you should be working with to get those spectacular results. Because I see this as a sticking point. I know our community at Book of Experts wants to know more. I see people struggling with that question because they're resistant about refining their niche at the same time that they need more business. It feels counterintuitive to be filtering people out. But that's exactly the process that we all have to figure out on our own to make, to level up. So I do want to explore that more. We've run out of time today. Adam, where are the best places for folks? I'm going to tell people my process. So I got into your group, the Fastest Path to Cash group on Facebook, because that was one of the places where you have a lot of resources. I would encourage folks to get to know Adam there. What about you? Where would you like to direct them to so they can get to know your world a bit better?
So right now, Fastest Path to Cash, you can look it up on Facebook or fastestpathtocash.club. We'll take you there. And when you dive in, look for the videos tab, because there is just a boatload of really great tutorials that will help you with some of those things, like identifying your good audience, packaging what you do into a good process, sales, finding your leads on social media. Like essentially a lot of what we covered in here, I'm freely giving a lot of really in-depth training. So fastestpathtocash.club.
Adam, I really appreciate you taking the time. This was a big win for me today to have you on and to be able to dig into this a little bit more. I mentioned I'm writing the book. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is there's a whole bunch of attribution in there to the impact and influence that you've had on me and what we're doing. So appreciate you taking the time and giving us a chance to hear a little bit more from you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.